I stared at the glossy invitation on my desk, the gold lettering mocking me. You're invited to Linda's 55th birthday celebration. My own mother's birthday party, and I had to find out about it through my father's secretary, who assumed I already knew. I didn't. My name is Maria, and I've spent the last 8 years being the invisible daughter of the Holmes family. While my sister Teresa basks in the spotlight of our mother's adoration, I've been quietly keeping our family business afloat from behind the scenes. Did you see the invite? My best friend Aiden's voice crackled through my phone speaker. Yeah, just now. Angela from Dad's office forwarded it to me. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the tremor gave me away. Are you sure? Aiden asked. Once you do this, I'm sure. I looked at the invitation again, my name conspicuously absent from its elegant surface. It's time everyone sees exactly who I am. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Crystal glasses clinked, fake laughter echoed off marble walls, and there, at the center of it all, stood my mother, beaming at Teresa like she hung the moon. Maria, Dad waved me over, relief visible on his face. You made it. Before I could respond, Mum's voice cut through the crowd. Everyone, Teresa has some wonderful news. The room fell silent. I gripped my champagne glass tighter, already knowing what was coming. The Richardson merger that Teresa handled last week. Mom's voice swelled with pride. It's officially our biggest deal of the year. Applause erupted. I took a long sip of champagne, trying to wash down the bitter taste in my mouth. I'd spent 3 months orchestrating that merger, working late nights, handling negotiations. Teresa had only shown up for the final signing. You should say something, Aiden whispered beside me. He'd come as my +1, my emotional support in this den of wolves. What's the point? Maria. Teresa's voice rang out as she approached us, her designer dress swishing. I'm so glad you came. Did you hear about the merger? Congratulations, I managed, the word tasting like ash. Oh, and thank you for fixing that presentation last week. Mom said it was brilliant. She lowered her voice. Though next time, could you make the financial projections a bit simpler? Some of the board members looked confused. They looked confused because you couldn't answer their questions properly, I muttered. What was that? Nothing, excuse me. I turned to leave, but Mum appeared, blocking my path. Teresa, darling, Mr. Peterson wants to discuss potential opportunities for you in the London office. London office, I blurted out. But that's my project. I've been developing that expansion for... Maria, Mum cut me off, her smile never reaching her eyes. This is hardly the time or place. Besides, Teresa has shown exceptional leadership skills. You should learn from her example. Learn from her? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Do you even know what she actually does at the company? The conversation around us quieted. Teresa's smile faltered. Maria, Dad warned softly. No, I want to know. I turned to Mom. Do you know who actually wrote the merger proposal? Who spent 3 months negotiating terms? Who stays late every night making sure your precious Teresa looks good? Mom's face hardened. I think you've had too much to drink. I think I haven't had nearly enough. I set my glass down with a sharp clink. You know what's funny? Teresa couldn't even explain basic profit projections to the board without my notes. That's enough, Mom snapped. If you can't celebrate your sister's success without jealousy, perhaps you should leave. Jealousy? I felt Aiden's steadying hand on my arm. I'm not jealous, Mom. I'm tired. Tired of being invisible while Teresa takes credit for my work. How dare you? Teresa stepped forward. I've earned everything I... Really? I pulled out my phone. Should we call Mr. Richardson right now? Ask him who actually handled the merger negotiations. The room had gone completely silent. Guests pretended to be absorbed in their drinks, but I knew they were hanging on every word. Maria, Dad said quietly, maybe we should step outside. Why? I met Mom's cold stare. Isn't this what parties are for? Family togetherness? If you can't behave like a proper daughter, Mom hissed, then perhaps you shouldn't consider yourself part of this family at all. The words hit like a physical blow. Even Teresa looked shocked. Mom, she gasped. I straightened my spine, years of hurt crystallizing into determination. You know what? You're right. I shouldn't consider myself part of this family, because this isn't a family, it's a fan club for Teresa. Maria, Dad started. No, it's fine. I grabbed my purse. I'll go. But remember this moment, Mom. Remember exactly what you said tonight. Aiden followed me out, waiting until we reached my car before speaking. Are you okay? That's messed up, Maria. Your own mother. It's fine, I cut him off, though we both knew it wasn't. I'm used to it. My computer pinged with another email, this time from Teresa, asking me to review her presentation for tomorrow's board meeting. The same presentation she'd take credit for, just like always. I leaned against the cool metal, my hands shaking. Call Bruce, tell him I want to meet first thing tomorrow. You're really going to do it? I thought about Mum's words, about Teresa's fake sympathy, about years of being pushed aside. Yes, it's time they learned what it feels like to be invisible. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Dad watching from the window, his expression unreadable. Soon he'd understand why I had to do this. Soon they'd all understand. Happy birthday, Mom, I whispered to the night. I hope you enjoyed your party, because it's the last one you'll host as CEO of this company. Bruce's office felt colder than usual as I spread the documents across his desk. Aiden sat beside me, scrolling through financial records on his tablet. Your mother's been busy, Bruce said, adjusting his reading glasses. These unauthorized transfers to the London office, all under Teresa's name, I finished. But look at the signatures. Aiden leaned forward. Those aren't Teresa's. No. I pulled out another document. Mum's been forging Teresa's signature on official documents for months, probably trying to build a paper trail of Teresa's competence. Bruce removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. This is serious, Maria. Combined with the contract your father signed, a knock interrupted us. Kendall, Teresa's best friend and our HR director, stood in the doorway, her face pale. I need to talk to you, she said. All of you. I nodded, and she closed the door behind her. I can't keep quiet anymore, Kendall burst out. Your mother, she's planning to force your father into early retirement. She wants to install Teresa as CEO immediately. What? The word came out as a whisper. There's more. Kendall pulled out her phone. Listen to this. I recorded it yesterday. Mom's voice filled the room. Once James is out, we'll need to deal with Maria. Find a way to discredit her work. Make her quit. Teresa needs to be the only viable successor. My hands clenched into fists as Teresa's voice responded. But Maria does good work, Mom. The company needs strong leadership, not someone who hides in their office doing paperwork. Trust me, darling. I know what's best. Kendall stopped the recording. I'm sorry, Maria. I should have come forward sooner. Why now? Aiden asked, his protective instinct kicking in. Because what they're doing is wrong. Kendall met my eyes. And because I saw what happened at the party. You deserve better. Bruce cleared his throat. This recording, combined with the forged documents and your father's contract, we have everything we need. Wait. I stood up, pacing. Why would Teresa agree to this? She knows she can't handle the company alone. Power is seductive, Bruce said quietly, and your mother can be very persuasive. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. Your mother's called an emergency board meeting for next week. Something about succession planning. They're moving fast, Aiden observed. I turned to Bruce. How quickly can we prepare everything? Give me 2 days. I'll have all the documentation ready, including proof of the forgeries. Make it 1 day. I showed him Dad's text. We need to move faster. Kendall stepped forward. I have access to all the HR files. I can help. Why would you risk your job for this? I had to ask. Because Teresa's my friend, but this isn't right. Your mother's manipulating everyone, including Teresa. Someone needs to stop it. My phone buzzed again. Teresa this time. Mum's acting weird. Says she needs me to sign some papers about London. Can you look them over first? Perfect timing, Aiden said, reading over my shoulder. I typed back, "Sure. Meet me at the office in an hour." "This is your chance," Bruce said. "Get her to admit to the forgeries, record everything." An hour later, I sat across from Teresa in my office, watching her flip through the London documents. "These numbers seem off," she frowned. "And this signature. Maria, this isn't mine." "I know." I placed my phone on the desk, recording. "Mom's been forging your signatures." Teresa's face crumpled. "She said it was just temporary, that she'd fix everything once I was ready." "Ready for what?" "You know what's crazy?" I said, opening the attachment. "Teresa's about to present my market analysis to the board tomorrow. The one I spent 3 weeks putting together, and Mom will probably throw her another celebration dinner for it." "Why do you keep doing this to yourself?" Aidan asked. "You have the—" "Don't." I glanced at my locked desk drawer, where that particular document lay hidden. "Not yet. To take over." Teresa looked up, tears in her eyes. "She wants me to be CEO, but Maria, I can't. Everything I've accomplished, it's all been you. The mergers, the expansions. I'm just the face." "Then why go along with it?" "Because—" She wiped her eyes. "Because it's the only way Mom looks at me with pride. If I failed, if I told the truth—" "She'd treat you like she treats me?" Teresa nodded miserably. I stopped the recording. "T, what Mom's doing isn't just wrong, it's illegal. And it's hurting everyone, including you." "What are you going to do?" I gathered the documents, my decision crystallizing. "I'm going to show everyone exactly who's been running this company. The question is, are you with me or with Mom?" Teresa stared at the forged documents, then at me. For the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of my rival. "Tell me what you need," she whispered. I smiled, feeling the pieces falling into place. "First, we need to talk about that board meeting next week." The week leading up to the board meeting felt like walking through a minefield. Mom paraded around the office, dropping hints about exciting changes and new leadership, while Teresa avoided eye contact whenever we passed in the hallways. "Everything's ready," Bruce said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Are you sure about this timing? Mum's given us no choice." I checked my watch. She's meeting with the board members individually today, probably trying to secure their votes. My phone lit up with a message from Aidan. "Your mother just went into Peterson's office, looking smug." "We need to move now," Bruce insisted, "before she has time to—" The door burst open. Dad stood there, his face ashen. "Maria, we need to talk." Bruce gathered his papers. "I'll give you two a moment." Once we were alone, Dad sank into a chair. "Your mother, she wants me to sign retirement papers. Today." "What?" "The board meeting isn't until next week. She says it's better this way, cleaner." He ran a hand through his hair. "She has everything prepared, the paperwork, the press release announcing Teresa as the new CEO." "Dad." I knelt beside his chair. "Do you trust me?" He met my eyes. "You know I do. Then don't sign anything. Not today, not tomorrow." I squeezed his hand. "Just hold on until the board meeting." "Maria, what are you planning?" A knock interrupted us. Teresa slipped in, closing the door quickly. "Mom's finishing up with Peterson," she said. "She's coming here next." Dad looked between us, confusion clear on his face. "You two are working together." "Things change," Teresa said softly. "Sometimes we need to fix our mistakes." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Teresa's eyes widened. "She's coming." "Dad," I whispered urgently, "whatever happens, whatever she says, just stall. Can you do that?" He nodded, straightening his spine just as Mom swept into the office. "James, darling." "Oh." Her smile faltered, seeing us all there. "Girls, your father and I need to discuss something private." "Actually," Teresa spoke up, "I need to talk to you about the London office signatures." Mom's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Later, dear. This is more important." "Is it?" I asked. "More important than forged documents?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mum's smile became razor sharp. Maria, I don't know what you think you're implying, but this is hardly the time for your accusations. Mom, Teresa stepped forward. We know about the signatures, about everything. Mom's composure cracked, just for a second. Teresa, darling, we discussed this. Sometimes in business we need to expedite things. By breaking the law. I pulled out copies of the forged documents. By forcing Dad into retirement. You don't understand, Mom snapped. Everything I've done has been for this family, for the company's future. You mean for Teresa's future, I corrected. Or at least, what you think is best for Teresa. I know what's best for this company, Mom said, her voice rising. And it's certainly not someone who hides behind spreadsheets and paperwork. Dad stood up. Linda, that's enough. No, James, it's not enough, Mom whirled on him. Sign the papers, now, before she ruins everything. Before I ruin what? I asked quietly. Your perfect plan. Your attempt to push Dad out and install Teresa as your puppet CEO. How dare you? My office door opened and Dad stepped in. His tired eyes met mine, and he gestured for me to end the call. I'll call you back, I told Aiden. Dad closed the door behind him, his shoulders sagging. I just heard about the invitation situation. It's okay, Dad, really. No, it's not. He ran a hand through his graying hair. I told your mother to send you one. She said she would. I forced a smile. Well, now I know. I'll be there. Mom, Teresa interrupted, tears in her eyes. Stop, please. I can't do this anymore. I can't be CEO. I'm not qualified. Of course you are. You've handled everything perfectly. No, Teresa's voice strengthened. Maria handled everything. The mergers, the expansions, the London office, all of it. I just presented her work. Mum's face went white. You're choosing her side, after everything I've done for you. I'm choosing the truth, Teresa said. The office door opened again. Bruce stepped in, followed by Peterson and 2 other board members. I believe, Bruce said calmly, we should move up that board meeting. Now seems like a good time to discuss the company's future, don't you think? Mom's eyes darted between all of us, realization dawning. You planned this. No, Mom. I gathered the documents, my hand steady. You planned this. I'm just making sure everyone sees exactly what you planned. As Bruce ushered us toward the boardroom, I caught Dad's eye. He nodded slightly, pride replacing the worry on his face. The time for hiding was over. Now, everyone would see the truth, whether Mom was ready or not. The boardroom felt like a courtroom as Bruce laid out the evidence. Mom sat rigid in her chair, her knuckles white against the polished mahogany table. Teresa hadn't stopped trembling since she began her confession. So you're saying, Peterson leaned forward, that Maria has been the actual architect of our recent successes? Yes, Teresa's voice cracked. The Richardson merger, the Asian expansion, the London office, it was all Maria's work. I just presented it. And the signatures? Another board member asked. I didn't sign those documents, Teresa said. Mum did. She said it was necessary for the transition. Transition? Peterson's eyebrows shot up. The plan to remove Dad and make me CEO. Teresa couldn't meet Mom's eyes. But I can't do it. I'm not qualified. Maria is. Mom slammed her hand on the table. This is ridiculous. You're letting her manipulate you, Teresa. Everything I did was to protect this company's future. By breaking the law, I pulled out the contract Dad had signed years ago. Or by ignoring this, Bruce distributed copies to the board members. This document, signed 5 years ago, makes Maria the majority shareholder of the company. It was Mr. Holmes's insurance policy, ensuring the company would be led by the most capable successor. James? Mom's voice trembled. Is this true? Dad straightened in his chair. I've watched Maria work miracles for this company, while you dismissed her achievements. I had to protect her future, and the company's. You betrayed me? Mom's face contorted. After everything we built together? No, Linda, you betrayed us. You betrayed both our daughters with your obsession with appearances. Kendall stepped forward. playing the recorded conversation. Mom's voice filled the room, discussing plans to force Dad's retirement and push me out. The board members exchanged alarmed looks. "Mrs. Holmes," Peterson said gravely, "these allegations are extremely serious. Forgery, fraud, attempted corporate takeover." "It was all for Teresa," Mom burst out. "She's the face this company needs. Maria is she's just..." "Just what, Mom?" I stood up slowly. "Just the daughter who actually knows how to run this company. The one you've been stealing work from for years." "I never stole..." "Really?" I pulled up the presentation from last month's board meeting on the screen. "Teresa, explain the financial projections in Section 3. Teresa paled. I can't." "Because you didn't write them," I said quietly. "I did, like everything else." "This is outrageous." Mom stood up, her chair scraping back. "You're all conspiring against me. Teresa, tell them the truth." "I am telling the truth, Mom." Teresa's voice strengthened. "For the first time in years, I'm finally telling the truth." The board members huddled together, whispered conversations filling the tense silence. Finally, Peterson spoke. "Given the evidence presented, we need to take immediate action. Mrs. Holmes, you'll be suspended pending a full investigation. Mr. Holmes will remain as CEO until a proper succession plan is implemented. Maria..." He hesitated. "I've seen how hard you work. The hours you put in, the way you support your sister. Your mother, Dad, please." I stood up, gathering Teresa's presentation papers. "We both know Mum will never see me the way she sees Teresa. I accepted that a long time ago." My phone buzzed with a text from Teresa. "Did you fix the presentation yet? Mom wants me to rehearse it for her tonight." Dad caught a glimpse of the message and frowned. "You know, you could tell them." "You can't do this." Mom's voice rose hysterically. "This is my company." "Actually," Bruce held up the contract, "it's Maria's company, and has been for 5 years." "No." Mom turned to Teresa, reaching for her hand. "Darling, please. We can fix this. Tell them you were confused, pressured." Teresa pulled away. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't lie anymore." The security team Bruce had quietly arranged waited outside. As they escorted Mom from the boardroom, she turned back one last time. "You'll regret this," she hissed at me. "Both of you will regret betraying me." After she left, Teresa collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Maria, for everything." "It's not your fault," I said, surprising myself by meaning it. "Mom manipulated both of us." Dad cleared his throat. "The board needs to make some decisions. Teresa, Maria, perhaps you should take the rest of the day." Outside the boardroom, Teresa grabbed my arm. "What happens now? Now?" I looked at the office around us, the empire Mum had tried so desperately to control. Now we rebuild, the right way this time. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about years of resentment, of watching Teresa take credit for my work, but I also thought about Mum's manipulation, about Teresa's courage today. "I already have," I said. "We were both victims here. The question is, are you ready to learn the business properly this time? As my sister, not my rival." Teresa's smile was watery but genuine. "I'd like that." My phone buzzed, Aidan checking in. I typed quickly, "It's done. Mum's out. Everything's changing." And it was. The truth had finally come out, and with it, the chance to rebuild not just the company, but maybe our family too. Well, what was left of it anyway. 3 days after the boardroom confrontation, I found Teresa sitting in my office, staring at a stack of financial reports. "These are incredible," she said, not looking up. "I never really read them before. Just memorized your notes." "That's about to change." I set 2 coffee cups down. "Ready for your first real lesson in corporate finance?" "Mum's lawyers called again," Teresa blurted out. "They want a meeting." I sank into my chair. "What did they say?" "She's threatening to go public. Tell everyone we orchestrated a hostile takeover." Teresa's hands shook as she reached for her coffee. "She says she'll destroy the company's reputation if we don't reinstate her." A knock interrupted us. Aidan poked his head in. Sorry, but you both need to see this. He placed his tablet on my desk, showing us Mom's social media post. Betrayed by my own daughters, the truth about corporate sabotage and family betrayal coming soon. Business scandal and family betrayal. She's really doing this, Teresa whispered. Of course she is. I pulled out my phone, dialing Bruce. She's losing control, so she's trying to force our hands. Bruce answered on the first ring. I assume you've seen it. Yes. Options. We have the evidence, Maria. All of it. If she goes public, she'll only implicate herself. But she'll damage the company in the process, Teresa said, loud enough for Bruce to hear. Actually, Bruce's voice took on a familiar legal tone. This might be the perfect opportunity to get ahead of the story. On our terms. Dad appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. Peterson's called an emergency board meeting. Your mother's posts are making investors nervous. An hour later, we sat in the boardroom again, but this time I was at the head of the table. We need to act fast, Peterson said. The market hates uncertainty. Then let's give them certainty. I opened my laptop. I've prepared a press release detailing everything. The forged documents, the attempted forced retirement, all of it. But also our path forward. You want to go public with our dirty laundry? Teresa looked horrified. I want to control the narrative, I corrected. Show that we discovered irregularities, investigated, and took appropriate action. Position it as corporate responsibility, not family drama. It could work, Bruce nodded. Transparency often plays well with shareholders. There's more. I pulled up another document. I've drafted a new corporate structure. Teresa, I want you to head our client relations division. What? Teresa blinked. That I'm the one doing all the work? That Teresa barely understands half of what she presents? I shook my head. Mom would never believe it. A knock at my door interrupted us. Bruce, our family lawyer, stepped in, his expression grave. Maria, do you have a moment? Dad nodded at me and left, closing the door behind him. Bruce waited until we were alone. I saw the guest list for Linda's party. I assumed there was a mistake when I didn't see your name. You're excellent with people, T. That's not fake, that's all you. Let's use that strength legitimately. While you run everything else? She didn't sound angry, just curious. While I do what I've always done, but this time with proper recognition. Dad cleared his throat. The press will want interviews. Good. I stood up. Because I want to talk. No more hiding in the shadows. My phone buzzed. Another social media notification. Mom had posted again. Watch my exclusive interview tomorrow. The real story behind the corporate coup. She's not backing down, Teresa said. No, I smiled grimly. But this time, we're not either. I turned to the board. I suggest we schedule our own press conference. Today, beat her to the punch. Maria, Dad warned, this could get ugly. It's already ugly, Dad, but I'd rather fight in the open than hide in the shadows. The board voted unanimously to support my plan. As everyone filed out, Teresa lingered. Why are you giving me a chance, she asked. After everything? Because you chose truth over power. That's the sister I want by my side. Aidan appeared with a garment bag. Your power suit, as requested. The press conference is set for 4:00. I took the bag, remembering all the times I'd helped Teresa dress for presentations that should have been mine. T, I called as she turned to leave. Want to help me prepare? For real this time. Her smile was worth every bitter memory of the past 8 years. As we worked on the statement, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. You'll regret this. I made you both everything you are. Teresa saw it and grabbed my hand. No, she didn't. You did that yourself. And it's time everyone knew it. I squeezed her hand back, then started typing my response. You're right about one thing, Mom. Everyone will know the truth. All of it. See you at 4. The media was already gathering outside. Through my office window, I could see the news vans arriving. In a few hours, everything would change. Again. But this time, I was ready. No more hiding, No more shadows. It was time to step into the light. Camera flashes exploded as I stepped up to the podium. Teresa stood to my right, Dad to my left, presenting a united front. The conference room buzzed with reporters, all hungry for the scandal Mom had promised them. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," I began, my voice steady. "Today, we're here to address recent allegations and share some important corporate developments." A reporter's hand shot up. "Is it true your mother is accusing you of orchestrating a hostile takeover?" "Actually," I smiled, sliding the contract across the podium. "There was no takeover. This document, signed 5 years ago, legally established the company's succession plan." Another reporter jumped in. "Why are we just hearing about this now?" "Because," Teresa stepped forward, "I've been taking credit for Maria's work for years. Our mother orchestrated it, and I went along with it. That ends today." The room erupted. Cameras clicked frantically as reporters shouted questions. No mistake. I turned to my computer, pretending to work. Just Mom being Mom. "You know," Bruce said carefully, "that contract you showed me last month, it could change everything." I stopped typing. "I'm not ready." "The longer you wait—" "I know." I met his eyes. "But when I do this, I need it to be perfect. I need everyone to understand exactly what they've done." Bruce nodded slowly. "Just remember, timing is everything in business. And revenge." After he left, I unlocked my desk drawer and pulled out the contract, the document that could destroy my mother's illusion of control over the family business. Dad had signed it years ago, making me the majority shareholder, not her, not Teresa. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kendall, Teresa's best friend. "Hey, your mom's showing everyone Teresa's new office. You know, the one that was supposed to be yours." I looked at the contract in my hands, then at Teresa's presentation on my screen. 8 years of being invisible. 8 years of watching Teresa take credit for my work. 8 years of Mom pretending I didn't exist. Maybe Bruce was right about timing. I picked up my phone and called Aiden back. "Remember what you said about the contract?" "Yeah? I think it's time." I took a deep breath. Mom's birthday party might be the perfect occasion for a different kind of celebration. "Ms. Holmes," a woman in front called out, "your mother just tweeted that you fabricated evidence to force her out. Your response?" I gestured to Bruce, who began distributing packets. "These documents show a pattern of forged signatures and fraudulent representations. We've included forensic analysis confirming the forgeries." "And you can verify these claims?" someone else shouted. "I can," Teresa's voice rang clear, "because I'm the one whose signature was forged by our mother." The doors at the back of the room burst open. Mom strode in, her lawyer trailing behind her. "This is outrageous," she announced to the suddenly silent room. "My own daughters, spreading lies." "They're not lies, Linda." Dad's quiet voice carried surprising authority. "And you know it." "James?" Mom faltered slightly. "You're supporting this betrayal." "I'm supporting the truth." He turned to the reporters. "My wife has been manipulating this company and our daughters for years. I signed that contract to protect both the company and Maria's future." "This is all very dramatic," Mom's lawyer interjected, "but Mrs. Holmes has documentation." "Forged documentation," Bruce cut in smoothly. "Would you like us to present the forensic analysis of those signatures as well?" Mom's face contorted. "Teresa, darling, tell them how your sister is manipulating you." Teresa stepped to the podium. "No more lies, Mom. Maria did everything you praised me for. The Richardson merger, her work, the London office expansion, all her. I just stood there and smiled." "You ungrateful—" Mum started forward, but security blocked her path. I held up my hand for quiet. "We're not here to air family grievances. We're here to announce corporate changes that will ensure transparency and proper attribution of work going forward." "And what about your mother's role?" someone called out. "My mother's actions are under investigation. The board has suspended her pending the results." "You can't do this." Mom's voice rose hysterically. I built this company. No, Mom. I met her eyes across the room. Dad built this company. You just took the credit. Sound familiar? The reporters went wild, cameras flashing as Mom's face crumpled. Her lawyer tried to pull her away, but she shook him off. I did everything for you, she shouted. Both of you. I made you strong. No, Teresa said quietly. You made us afraid. Maria made us strong. If there are no further questions, I addressed the room, we've provided detailed press packets outlining the company's new structure and leadership team. One more question, a reporter stood up. Ms. Holmes, Maria, how does it feel to finally step out of the shadows? I looked at Teresa, who nodded encouragingly, then at Dad, who smiled with pride. Finally, I turned to Mum, still standing at the back of the room, her perfectly crafted world crumbling around her. It feels honest, I said simply, and that's how we'll run this company from now on. As security escorted Mom out, her last words rang through the room. You'll fail without me, both of you will fail. But looking at the supportive faces around me, Teresa, Dad, Bruce, Aidan, even the board members who'd come to show solidarity, I knew she was wrong. Later, as the last reporters filed out, Teresa hugged me tightly. That was terrifying, she whispered. But also, freeing? Yeah, I agreed. No more hiding. My phone buzzed with a text from Kendall. Check the stock price. I looked. Despite the scandal, or maybe because of our transparency, our shares were up. The market, it seemed, appreciated honesty as much as we did. Ready to learn your new role? I asked Teresa. For real this time. She squared her shoulders. Ready to be the sister you deserved all along. Together, we walked out of the conference room, leaving the shadows of Mom's manipulation behind us. The truth was out, and surprisingly, it felt like victory. The morning sun streamed through my office window as I reviewed the final settlement papers. Mom's signature looked shaky at the bottom, a far cry from her usual confident strokes. She signed without arguing. Teresa set 2 coffee cups on my desk. Bruce says she didn't have much choice. The evidence was overwhelming. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dad entered, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. Peterson just called, he said, settling into a chair. The board unanimously approved your proposal for the London office. Our proposal, I corrected, glancing at Teresa. The client relations strategy was all her. Teresa beamed. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you actually understand what you're presenting. My computer pinged with an email notification. Mum's giving an interview to the Financial Times tomorrow. Are we worried? Teresa's smile faded. No. I pulled up the pre-interview notes Bruce had obtained. She's admitting to everything. Says she was blinded by maternal ambition or something. Damage control, Dad nodded. Her lawyer probably insisted. Another knock. This time it was Kendall. Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to Mum's social media. My breath caught as I read her latest post. To my daughters, I was wrong. The need to control everything cost me what mattered most, your trust and love. I'm sorry. Is this real? Teresa whispered. Keep reading, Kendall urged. The post continued. Maria, you were never invisible. I was blind. Teresa, you never needed my manipulation to shine. I failed you both as a mother. The company is in better hands now. Your hands. She posted it an hour ago, Kendall said. It's already going viral. Dad cleared his throat, his eyes suspiciously bright. Maybe there's hope yet. Speaking of hope, I pulled out 2 folders. I have something for both of you. Teresa opened hers first, gasping. Is this your new contract as head of client relations, with a seat on the board? She looked up, tears in her eyes. I haven't earned this. You will, I said firmly. You already are. Dad opened his folder more slowly. Inside was a contract keeping him on as chairman emeritus, with an advisory role. Maria, he started, but I cut him off. The company needs your experience, Dad, and I need your guidance. The real kind, not Mom's version of it. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Holmes, your mother is here." The room fell silent. Teresa gripped my hand. "Send her in," I said. Mom looked smaller somehow, her designer suit hanging loose on her frame. She clutched her handbag like a shield. "I suppose you've seen my post," she said quietly. "We have." I gestured to an empty chair. "Did you mean it?" "Every word." She sat down stiffly. "My therapist says I need to make amends, but that's not why I'm here." "Why are you here, Mom?" Teresa asked. Mom pulled out a thick envelope. "These are my resignation papers from all remaining company positions. And," she hesitated, "my shares. I'm signing them over to both of you, equally." "Mom," Teresa breathed. "I can't take back what I did," Mom continued, "but I can try to fix what I broke. Starting with this." She turned to me. "You were never invisible, Maria. You were brilliant, and I was too obsessed with my own vision to see it. And me?" Teresa's voice shook. "Did you ever see me? The real me?" "I saw what I wanted you to be," Mom admitted. "I'm hoping maybe I could get to know who you actually are. Both of you?" I looked at Teresa, seeing my own mix of hope and caution reflected in her eyes. Then at Dad, who nodded slightly. "We have a monthly family dinner," I said carefully. "Usually just Dad, Teresa, and me. Maybe you could join us sometime." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that." As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "You've done amazing things here, both of you, together." After she left, Teresa turned to me. "Are we crazy to give her another chance?" "Maybe," I smiled, "but we're doing it our way this time. No more shadows, no more pretending." Dad squeezed both our shoulders. "Speaking of no more pretending, don't you have a board meeting to run?" I gathered my papers, catching my reflection in the window. The woman staring back wasn't invisible anymore. She never really had been. "Ready?" I asked Teresa. She straightened her jacket. "Ready to be your sister, your colleague, and myself, finally." Together we walked toward the boardroom, leaving the shadows behind for good. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about becoming exactly who you were meant to be in the full light of day.
After being away for several months, I returned home, only to find that the house where I grew up was on the market. This was the house filled with my childhood memories, and now it was being sold without my consent. It was my husband, Stephen, and my mother-in-law, Betty, who orchestrated this sale. They both came from less affluent backgrounds and seemed to disregard the sentimental value of my family home, viewing it only as a means to a financial end. You see, when I had left, I did so with the understanding that while I was gone, my home would be respected. Instead, I was met with betrayal. Stephen and Betty not only sold the house, but also seemed to take joy in their deceit, knowing full well the emotional and legal repercussions that would follow from their breach of trust. Their actions were a stark violation not only of our legal agreement, but of the emotional ties I had with that place. The house wasn't just a structure, it was a repository of my family's love and memories, a physical connection to my parents, who had moved to another home for their retirement. The decision to sell the house came as a shock, especially since my parents had always shown nothing but affection towards Stephen, accepting him as their own. Despite our differing socioeconomic backgrounds, with me being from a family of business owners, and Stephen from a single-parent, modest upbringing, my family had supported our union without reservation. Now, as I confront this betrayal, I realize the weight of my parents' gesture when they decided to transfer the house to me, intending for it to be a sanctuary and support for our future endeavors. It was supposed to be a gift, a token of their love and trust. I've been with Stephen for over 7 years. We've shared a life from a young age. Our marriage was supposed to be a partnership of equals, irrespective of our financial status or family heritage. Yet here we are, at a juncture where those foundational values are being tested. As the rightful owner of the house, the responsibility to manage the fallout from this unfortunate sale lies with me. But the trust between Stephen, Betty, and me has been deeply eroded. As I deal with the legal and emotional consequences of their actions, I'm left pondering the future of our relationship and the house that once symbolized our shared dreams and aspirations. After deciding against having children, the large family home my parents had bequeathed to us felt overwhelmingly spacious. I expressed my gratitude to my parents for their generosity, and though the official transfer of ownership hadn't yet occurred, I had already begun negotiations with a real estate agent. During one hectic morning, I reminded Stephen to complete some necessary paperwork. "Stephen, I need you to fill out this form. It's due today and we won't make it in time otherwise." He shrugged off my urgency with a dismissive wave. "Just write it down then. You're overreacting. Submitting it today will be just fine." His response stung, a far cry from the considerate man I married. Lately, Stephen had grown indifferent, often leaving critical tasks to me. He seemed to expect me to handle important documents and other responsibilities, which I did, more to avoid family conflict than anything else. But this dynamic left me feeling less like a partner and more like a servant. Despite these challenges, we proceeded with selling our current home and even picked out a new, more suitable place to live. However, doubts about the future with Stephen clouded my thoughts. Then, one day, I received distressing news. My parents had been in a serious car accident. I rushed to the hospital and learned they would need 7 months to recover fully, with intensive care required for the first 3. Determined to support them, I negotiated with my employer to adjust my work schedule and informed Stephen that I would be staying with my parents to help. Stephen's response was nonchalant. "Okay, it's your thing." His tone detached, showing little concern for my parents' well-being. Relieved yet worried, I wondered how Stephen would manage daily life without me. His inability to perform even basic chores like laundry or remember to take out the trash gave me pause. Could I leave him on his own without our home turning into a mess? With reservations, I turned to my mother-in-law, Betty, explaining the situation and asking if she could keep an eye on Stephen while I was away. "Please make yourself at home and help out as you see fit," I urged her, hoping that with her support, Stephen would manage until I could return. "Oh, Margaret, you seem to be in quite the bind, aren't you?" Betty said with a tone that dripped with condescension. "I'm sure your parents could afford to hire some help. Or is it just that you're missing them too much? Don't worry about Stephen. I'll take good care of him. You take all the time you need with your parents, even if it's more than 6 months," she added, her voice laced with a sincerity that felt more like sarcasm. It was clear she saw me as the woman who had whisked her son away. I managed a strained thank you to Betty, hiding my irritation. At that moment, she was my only option for ensuring Stephen had any supervision. With just the essentials packed, I hurried off to care for my recovering parents. The 6 months I spent with them were hectic and flew by. My contact with Stephen during this period was minimal, but the time was well spent aiding in my parents' recovery. Once they were stable and no longer needed my constant presence, I felt a mix of relief and readiness to return to my own life. Driving back, the familiar scenery of our town welcomed me, but as I approached our house, a chilling sight greeted me. A for sale sign stood prominently on the lawn. Confused and alarmed, I immediately called Stephen, only to hear a chuckle on the other end before he casually dropped the bombshell. "I sold the house and moved back in with my parents. I took care of everything while you were gone," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. None of what Stephen said made sense, so I drove straight to my in-laws' house, a mere 10 minutes away. The first shock was the sight of my belongings piled up at their front door. As I processed this, a contractor arrived, rang the bell, exchanged some paperwork with Betty, and began loading my things into his truck. Stephen soon appeared, and both he and Betty looked unusually upbeat, dressed in fancy clothes and near a luxury car I didn't recognize. The scene was surreal as they counted a stack of money with gleeful expressions. Confronting Betty in a mix of shock and anger, I demanded, "What is going on here, Betty?" With a dismissive scoff, she replied, "I cleared out all that clutter from the house for you. You never knew how to manage your stuff, being too well off and all." Her words stung, and she continued, "You've been such a negligent wife, putting your parents before your husband. I feel sorry for Stephen, having to deal with a wife like you. That's why I even told him to divorce you." Stephen then coldly informed me that the house was now legally in my name, which Betty used to justify selling it. "Since you were the one who told me I could do whatever I wanted, I did just that," he explained, showing me the contract with the real estate company that was signed about a month ago. Betty then flashed a condescending smile, as if she had outsmarted me in some twisted game. The betrayal was overwhelming, not just the loss of the house, but the realization that the person I trusted most had orchestrated it all. In the turmoil, I managed to collect my thoughts and faced Betty, my voice steady despite my inner panic. "But the house should already be under contract with another real estate company, right? And if it's my house, any contract without my signature would be invalid. You did this without my permission, and now you've breached the contract. The real estate company will demand compensation." Betty retorted dismissively, "I heard from Stephen that it was you who dealt with another agency without consulting my son. That's not my concern. I simply did what you usually do, handling things independently." Her indifference to the legality of her actions was appalling. "So, if there's compensation to be paid, it should be by you. It's your own house," she shrugged nonchalantly. I turned to Stephen, seeking some form of support or understanding, only to find him mirroring his mother's sarcastic smile. "Finally, this day has come. This is revenge, you know," he began. His words cut deeper as he continued, "You've always mocked me for being poor. I've always felt like an outsider in your family, with its different standards and values. You and your parents probably found it amusing." His bitterness spilled over as he said, "Being poor isn't funny, is it? Now I'll show you what money can do. I'm not going to let you be the only one with a comfortable life." With that, Stephen handed me the divorce papers, all filled out except for my signature. I could have had my mom handle everything and submit these, but where's the revenge in that? The situation escalated dramatically, feeling almost like a scene from a movie where the tables were turned dramatically. Stephen and Betty were visibly satisfied, reveling in what they believed was a victorious moment. Yet, as their glee peaked, I felt my anger dissipate, replaced by a stark realization of their blunder. "Look, I hate to break up your moment of triumph, but this house isn't mine anymore," I said calmly, a plan forming in my mind. "You've made a huge mistake. You're the ones who will suffer the consequences, not me." Resolved to no longer protect them or hide their deceit, I decided it was time to expose everything. Their actions, driven by spite and a misconstrued sense of justice, would soon come back to haunt them. I was done covering for their mistakes. It was time for the truth to come to light. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, unfolding it before Stephen and Betty. "This is the official registry document for the house," I explained calmly. "Remember our phone conversation the other day? Well, the ownership has been legally transferred to Stephen's name. With the accident my parents had, the process was delayed, but it was finalized just last week when you two decided to sell the house." Betty's face fell, confusion written all over it. "I didn't hear anything about this." "Of course you didn't," I responded. "I tried calling to see if I should mail it to you, but you hardly listened and just told me to handle it. You probably don't even remember, but I double-checked with you if it was all right." Stephen stared at the registry document, his expression turning to one of disbelief and worry. Betty, equally shocked, confronted me. "What are you saying?" I continued. "This was actually what my parents intended. They've always seen Stephen as their son and held you in high regard, Betty. They believed that giving us the house was not only a gesture of their love, but also a tribute to how well you raised Stephen." I let the weight of my words sink in. "But this, what you've done, is a betrayal, not just to me, but to my parents' genuine intentions." Stephen and Betty looked visibly shaken, their hands trembling as they covered their mouths. As I mentioned, this mess involves 2 real estate agencies now. They will undoubtedly seek compensation for the breach of contract, I explained. I'll be in touch with the agency I originally signed with. I suggest you contact the agency you dealt with to sort this out on your own. Pausing, I looked at them both, disappointment clear in my tone. I can't believe the agency accepted such a hasty explanation and went ahead with the contract. If you had issues or opinions, you should have been upfront with me rather than resorting to deceit. It's not about being poor, it's about being honest and respectful. My frustration peaked, and my voice grew louder as I confronted Stephen and Betty. This isn't about money, it's about the poverty of your hearts, I declared firmly. In the heat of the moment, I pulled out my cell phone, intent on calling the real estate agency to report the deception, but just as I was about to dial, Stephen intervened, his voice desperate. Wait. This isn't what I wanted. I was just upset because you left. Let's try to sort this out together, as a couple. His next suggestion reeked of desperation and naivety. I know, I could buy the house that's currently on the market, call the old real estate agency, and we could pretend none of this ever happened. You're wealthy, so you could afford that, right? His plea was interrupted by Betty, who had been quietly seething beside him. Her fear of losing everything suddenly shifted her allegiances. Stephen, are you turning on me now? After I arranged everything for you? I can't believe you'd put your wife before your mother. What a heartless son. Her words, laced with irony, stung her back when I shot back. Oh, but according to what you said earlier, Betty, putting parents first is scummy, right? Then you should be glad Stephen isn't scum. You should be proud of him being such a fine son. Caught in her hypocrisy, Betty was left speechless. Stephen, sensing an opportunity, tried to win me over. Margaret, you're the most important person to me right now. I'm going to change my attitude and do my best. Please don't get me wrong. His words did little to sway me. No one said anything about forgiveness, I retorted as I brushed his hand away when he tried to take mine. I was completely disillusioned with his excuses and lack of responsibility. I'm already tired of your laziness, Stephen, and every time something goes wrong, you blame others and expect them to fix your problems. How can I trust you to change? My final words to him were clear and harsh. I'm not your secretary or your servant. As an adult, you should take responsibility for your actions. You will pay for this for the rest of your life, both you and Betty. With resolve, I took the divorce papers from Stephen's hand, stamped my signature right then and there, and left them standing in stunned silence. Following that tumultuous day, the divorce proceedings, though complicated, were eventually finalized. In a twist of irony, Stephen and Betty later sued my family, claiming they had been deceived by my parents and demanded compensation. The ordeal was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next with a clear conscience and a steadfast determination to protect my family's integrity. As expected, Stephen and Betty lost their lawsuit. Their underhanded tactics not only failed, but also left them financially responsible for significant compensation to both real estate agencies involved. The aftermath of their actions spiraled into a blame game between them, suggesting a long and troubled road ahead. Meanwhile, my employer had kindly arranged for me to continue working remotely, allowing me to stay with and support my parents during their recovery. Returning to my parents' place has been a grounding experience. Each day we navigate their rehabilitation together, sharing small but meaningful gestures of care. Your bath is ready, my father tells me, a simple kindness after a long day. Thank you, I reply. I'll wash the dishes, so you go ahead and relax first. You must be tired after today's rehab. No, you first, Margaret, he insists. I'll clean the tub later anyway. Go on, take a moment for yourself. Living with them again, I witness the unwavering support they have for each other, even as they continue to recover from the accident. It's in these quiet, everyday interactions that I've come to realize what was fundamentally absent in my marriage to Stephen: mutual respect and consideration. Initially, the divorce brought a wave of sadness and frustration. Yet watching my parents, I understand more clearly what a loving and supportive relationship looks like. I've learned valuable lessons about respect, communication, and the kind of partnership I desire. If I ever decide to open my heart again, I'll be much more cautious, armed with the insights gained from this ordeal. I'm determined not to cause any more worry for my mom and dad. Instead, I'm focused on applying these lessons to my life moving forward and continuously expressing my gratitude to my parents. This new chapter at my parents' home isn't just about recovery, it's about starting anew, fortified by the wisdom gained from past experiences and a renewed appreciation for the family who has always stood by me. Hello, I'm Gloria, a 36-year-old office worker navigating the complexities of daily life. My husband Matthew and I celebrated our 8th wedding anniversary recently, and we became parents almost immediately after our wedding. Our daughter, the light of our lives, is about to turn 8. Over the years, there have been moments of tension in our marriage, but the joy our daughter brings us is undeniable, and overall, I find great happiness in our family life. However, like in any family, there are areas of discontent, and for me, it revolves around financial management within our household. Matthew has a penchant for spending a significant portion of his earnings on his hobbies. While he doesn't go overboard, the amount he spends is not negligible. I have always emphasized the need for him to contribute a fixed minimum amount to our household expenses. This contribution helps us cover the essentials like utilities and groceries. Nonetheless, because Matthew contributes just the minimum, I find myself constantly looking for ways to reduce our spending elsewhere. My salary goes towards our rent, our daughter's school fees, and saving for her future educational costs. This financial juggling is a source of ongoing stress for me. Adding to the strain is the division of household labor. Despite both of us working full-time jobs, Matthew contributes very little to the household chores. I've repeatedly expressed my desire for a more equitable distribution of these duties. Balancing work, financial management, and home maintenance is challenging, and I often wish the responsibilities were more evenly shared. Despite these challenges, I maintain a positive outlook and work tirelessly to ensure our home is a nurturing environment for our daughter. I hope that as she grows, we can model the values of responsibility and teamwork, making adjustments along the way to better support one another in all aspects of our family life. This situation isn't perfect, but I'm committed to making the best of it and ensuring that our family thrives. Whenever I asked him to help around the house, he would claim it would take him too long to do the tasks, using this as an excuse to avoid them. Consequently, it became routine for me to handle everything by myself. We had our daughter shortly after getting married, but my husband hardly participated in her upbringing. He expressed fears of accidentally hurting her, which left me carrying most of the parental responsibilities. Over time, I grew increasingly dissatisfied with my husband. Despite this, we had been together for 8 years and had a growing child. I knew initiating a divorce at a time when our daughter was approaching puberty might not be wise. I told myself that perhaps it was normal for spouses to feel distant after years together, and that no family is perfect. However, a recent incident involving my sister-in-law made me seriously reconsider our marriage. One day, unexpectedly, she showed up at my doorstep looking distressed. "Gloria, I'm sorry, but I need to hide out here for a while," she said urgently. "I've had a bit of a problem with my husband. Can I stay here for a bit?" Curious and concerned, I asked her, "Did something happen with Ryan?" She evasively tried to change the topic, which left me unsatisfied and anxious for more information. I waited until my husband came home from work. It was about 9 p.m., and after we put our daughter to bed, my sister-in-law, my husband, and I finally sat down to talk. "So, what happened, sister?" I inquired. She replied, "Well, Ryan just snapped and angrily said he wants a divorce." This was shocking to me because I always thought of Ryan as a very stable and sincere person. I was taken aback when my sister-in-law mentioned that Ryan, her husband, had abruptly demanded a divorce. It didn't add up. Ryan wasn't the type to lose his temper without a valid reason. "Why did Ryan get so angry?" I asked her. "Why are you asking me that?" she retorted, her voice tinged with panic. It crossed my mind that perhaps she had done something to provoke him, considering his drastic decision to divorce. "Why are you defending Ryan? Are you involved with him or something?" she accused. Of course, I denied it. My husband chimed in, laughing off her accusation. "No, that's impossible. She barely has time for anything beyond her responsibilities," he defended me, noting how I always left my phone out in the open. Despite my husband's defense, I was frustrated. My life was a whirlwind of work, household chores, and caring for our kids. After long days, I barely had time to glance at my phone, let alone engage in an affair. Still puzzled, my sister-in-law insisted she didn't know why Ryan was upset. We decided it was best to speak directly with Ryan to clear the air. Later, Ryan came over to our house. My sister-in-law chose to step out, finding it too awkward to face him. Upon his arrival, Ryan was apologetic, expressing his regret for the upheaval he had caused. "I'm really sorry for causing so much trouble," he said earnestly, confirming my belief in his sensible nature. "I can't understand why you'd ask for a divorce so suddenly, Ryan. You've only been married a year. Isn't that quite severe? There must be a reason," I pressed him, hoping for some clarity on the sudden rift in their marriage. Ryan disclosed a significant issue that had shaken the foundation of their marriage. My sister-in-law had used up his entire savings of $110,000 without his consent. My husband and I were taken aback by the revelation. "You managed to save $110,000 and it's all gone in just 1 year? That averages about $5,500 every month," I said, astounded by the sheer amount. Further probing revealed that Ryan had been diligently managing their finances, allocating sufficient funds from his monthly income to cover all living and necessary expenses. This meant that the $110,000 was spent entirely on non-essential personal entertainment by my sister-in-law. It's only natural for Ryan to be upset. Anyone would be in his shoes, I know I would be. I sympathized, recognizing the difficulty in maintaining a relationship with someone who has such a reckless spending habit. A sense of discomfort lingered in the air, perhaps because my husband, too, shared a tendency to overspend, much like his sister. It felt like familial traits were at play here. Given the circumstances, I suggested to Ryan, if she doesn't make an effort to repay the $110,000, you might want to think about separating, especially since there are no children to consider. Nodding in agreement with my advice, my husband unexpectedly chimed in, "I'll ensure my sister pays you back." His sudden confidence left me puzzled. How could he be so sure? Ryan thanked him, appreciating the support. "I'd appreciate that, thank you." It seemed we had reached a tentative resolution, and I decided to monitor how the situation would evolve from there. After Ryan departed, my sister-in-law made her way back to our house. I confronted her immediately. "Ryan mentioned you used up all of his savings, $110,000. Defensively, she responded, "I used it for living expenses. I tried to explain this to him, but he just wouldn't understand." However, Ryan had previously clarified that he maintained a separate account specifically for everyday expenses. Her reply was sharp and dismissive. "You don't know anything, so just shut up." Her harsh tone was not out of character. She often resorted to belittling me in our conversations. Given her lack of remorse and her dismissive attitude towards the financial chaos she'd caused, it was increasingly apparent that Ryan might indeed be better off seeking a divorce. Her inability to acknowledge the gravity of the situation or express any intent to amend her mistakes painted a bleak picture of the future of their marriage. During the heated discussion, Ryan mentioned that he could consider forgiving my sister-in-law if she repaid the $110,000 she had spent. "How can I pay back that much? I'm just a housewife," she lamented, seemingly cornered by her actions. I retorted somewhat sternly, If you can't manage to pay it back, you shouldn't be spending his money in the first place. Amidst the tension, my sister-in-law turned to me with a hopeful sparkle in her eye. Relax, Gloria. We've got money, right? You've got $220,000 saved up, so no worries, right? She exclaimed as if she had found a miraculous solution. What? Wait a minute, how do you even know about my savings, Matthew? I asked, completely thrown off. I had never disclosed to my husband that I had saved that amount for our daughter's future tuition. I found it when I went to your parents' house. It was in the second drawer of the closet in your room, he admitted nonchalantly. You went through my things without asking? That's unbelievable. We're married, but that doesn't automatically make my personal belongings open for inspection, I protested, feeling betrayed by the breach of privacy. Ignoring my concerns, Matthew pressed on. Your sister-in-law is in trouble. Give us your savings to help her out. I was incredulous. I'm not handing over the money. That's for our daughter's future. If you think $110,000 should just be handed over, then why don't you find a way to pay her? I challenged. Dramatic turn, Matthew pulled out divorce papers from a drawer, as if he had been contemplating this option all along. During the confrontation, Matthew casually mentioned he had prepared divorce papers just in case. I had them ready in case something happened. You've got some nerve trying to manipulate the situation like this, he said with a cold edge to his voice. That's exactly what I've been wanting to say to you, I shot back, equally frustrated with the audacity of his actions. Then, with an air of finality, Matthew filled out the form and stated flatly, I'm serious. We can get a divorce anytime you want. My sister-in-law, watching the drama unfold with a mischievous grin, eagerly offered her support to Matthew. Well, I'll be one of your witnesses, she declared and scribbled her name on the form. You can either pay me the $110,000 or we can get a divorce, Matthew threatened, thinking he could back me into a corner. I was astounded by their boldness and underhanded tactics. Deciding not to let them see how deeply they were affecting me, I feigned compliance, letting the moment pass without further confrontation. The next day, I took matters into my own hands and invited some important figures, my in-laws and Ryan, to our home. When they arrived, Matthew was bewildered. Ryan, why are you here? Mom, Dad, what's going on? Before Matthew could continue, his father intervened. Matthew, don't embarrass yourself further. Turning to me, his mother apologized. Gloria, I'm sorry about my son's and daughter's foolish behavior. Ryan also chimed in. I must apologize to you too, Gloria. Their apologies were a balm, but the situation quickly escalated again when Matthew tried to assert himself. Why are you two apologizing? You should be quiet. Ignoring him, his father continued. We went through your room, Matthew, and found stacks of expensive bags and jewelry. His mother explained further. Ryan asked us to look into it, and it's clear you've had a habit of hiding expensive purchases from us since you were young. The revelations were damning. Facing the mounting evidence of his deceit, Matthew's mother concluded, I can't stay married to you anymore. The tide had turned dramatically, revealing the true extent of Matthew's financial indiscretions and casting my earlier grievances in a starkly different light. After it came out that my sister-in-law had falsely claimed she used the $110,000 for living expenses, the situation escalated. I want you to pay me back the $110,000 and then we can get a divorce, Ryan demanded firmly. To everyone's shock, especially Matthew's, I had already taken significant steps. Oh no, Matthew, you're getting a divorce too. Gloria already filled out the divorce papers and I signed as a witness. We just submitted them together, my sister-in-law declared defiantly. What? I won't allow that, Matthew exclaimed, outraged. You won't allow it? What are you talking about? You were the one threatening divorce and trying to make her, who has nothing to do with your sister's debts, take responsibility. You are despicable, I retorted. Gloria is my wife, not your property. She wasn't born into your family. She is essentially a stranger to whom you should show more respect and care, Ryan interjected, supporting me in front of everyone. Faced with such a straightforward and legitimate argument from my parents-in-law, Matthew was left speechless and could only hang his head in shame. My sister-in-law was also visibly shaken by the turn of events and stood by silently, overwhelmed. Thankfully, my parents-in-law facilitated the conversation smoothly, helping both Ryan and me navigate through the divorce without further complications. In an attempt to make amends, my sister-in-law managed to sell as many luxury goods as she could, gathering about $45,000 to repay Ryan. The remaining $30,000 was handled by my parents-in-law, under whose strict supervision my sister-in-law would have to repay the debt. This arrangement helped restore some balance and ensured that she was held accountable for her actions, while also supporting Ryan and me in starting fresh chapters in our lives. After the divorce, my sister-in-law found herself in a tough spot financially. She now works tirelessly from morning until night, striving to repay the substantial debt she accumulated from mismanaging her former husband's savings. Her days are long and filled with the kind of hard work that leaves little room for rest. As for my ex-husband, the divorce necessitated some adjustments on his part as well. I arranged for him to provide child support, which he has been managing to pay consistently despite his circumstances. However, I've heard through the grapevine that he continues to live alone in his apartment. His salary, though decent, is stretched thin by his rent, living expenses, and child support payments. The financial strain eventually forced him to move to a more affordable apartment. Unfortunately, his long-standing habit of unnecessary spending hasn't helped his situation. Despite living in a cheaper place, he often finds himself broke and without any savings. His financial behavior not only keeps him on a tight budget, but also suggests that he might find it challenging to enter into another relationship anytime soon, given his unstable financial footing. Meanwhile, I've returned to my parents' home with my daughter. Being back home has allowed me to stabilize our lives and focus on the future. My parents have been incredibly supportive, helping with childcare while I work. This support system has been crucial in allowing me to regain my footing after the divorce. I'm working diligently, not just to meet our day-to-day needs, but also to save for my daughter's future. I want her to have every opportunity to pursue her dreams and ambitions without financial constraints. It's a new chapter for us, and I'm determined to make it a successful one. I'm also planning to continue sharing our journey, hoping our story can inspire or help others in similar situations. If you find our story engaging and are interested in seeing how we navigate this new phase of our lives, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot, and I look forward to connecting with you in future videos. Thank you for watching. Hello, I'm Janet, a 33-year-old stay-at-home mom living with my two wonderful children. Life has been quite good for us lately, although we've hit a rough patch due to some issues with my husband, mainly revolving around his mother. You see, my husband is very close to his mom, what some might call a mama's boy, and it sometimes feels like she's overly involved in our lives. Recently, the situation came to a head during a serious discussion we had. It started when my husband called me over and asked me to sit down because he wanted to discuss our finances. He reassured me that everything was fine with his job, but mentioned that we needed to tighten our budget at home to accommodate a new expense. When I asked what the expense was, he hesitated, taking a deep breath before revealing that he wanted to start giving his mother a monthly sum of money. According to him, it wouldn't be a huge amount, but given that she was getting older, he felt she needed the extra support. This puzzled me because his mother, Catherine, ran a successful business and was quite well off. She was a widow, and with her children out of the house, it didn't seem to me that she was in need of financial help. I expressed my concerns, but he brushed them aside, not willing to divulge how much he planned to send her. Insisting on transparency, especially since I managed our household finances, I pressed him for details. Finally, he admitted that he planned to send her $6,100 each month. I was shocked by the amount. $6,100 a month seemed excessive, especially considering that it was roughly what many families spend in total each month. I argued that it wasn't reasonable, but he was adamant. The disagreement escalated to the point where we ended up sleeping in separate beds that night, both upset and unresolved. This financial decision affected not only strained our budget, but our relationship as well. As someone who prioritizes smart financial management, the idea of sending $6,100 monthly to someone without a pressing need seemed impractical. That sum, totaling $63,500 annually, could significantly benefit our family by boosting our children's college funds, contributing to our health insurance, or increasing our savings. Alternatively, this amount could make a real difference if donated to charities supporting those in dire need. Despite my attempts to convey these thoughts to my husband, he remained unyielding. 6 months after he started transferring money to his mother, he even suggested I handle the monthly transactions, which felt like a further assertion of his priorities, placing his mother's whims over our family's financial well-being. However, this arrangement took an unexpected turn when I discovered new information about the situation. 5 months into the allowance, during a visit from my mother-in-law, she casually mentioned how this financial help had come at a crucial time. Business hadn't been as good, and although she hadn't wanted to ask for help, my husband had intuitively stepped in to support her. Hearing her admit to struggling financially changed my perspective. I was moved by her vulnerability and found myself sympathizing with her need. It seemed only right to support someone genuinely in distress. Yet, as we continued talking, the conversation took a perplexing turn. Catherine began discussing potential luxury vacations she could now afford thanks to the extra money. This struck me as odd. If she truly needed financial aid, why consider such extravagant expenditures? Whenever I seemed puzzled by her plans, she would quickly adjust her narrative, claiming she only meant such travels could happen once she regained her financial independence. This contradiction was confusing, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt, attributing it to a momentary lapse into wishful thinking. Over the next 3 months, I continued sending her the money, each time receiving heartfelt thanks that seemed to confirm her genuine need. Feeling guilty for doubting my mother-in-law and arguing with my husband, the financial strain of the situation soon began to impact our family life. Despite our efforts to adjust and cut corners, the reduction in our disposable income was noticeable, and I found myself trying to manage our finances more tightly. Then, one evening, while tidying up my husband's office, curiosity led me to a text message on his phone from his mother. It read, "Hey Liam, hope you're doing well. Could you increase my monthly allowance? I want to enjoy some extra luxuries." I was taken aback. Given that she already received a substantial sum that many would find ample for basic needs, her request for more, specifically for luxuries, seemed excessive. Considering she was a healthy 62-year-old widow who lived alone, this request raised doubts about her claimed financial distress. Driven by a mix of concern and suspicion, I resisted the urge to delve deeper into my husband's emails and instead turned my attention to our family's financial records. Finding no clues there, I decided to approach the matter directly. I phoned Catherine late one evening. "Hello, Catherine, I hope everything's okay with you." She responded, "Well, I'm managing, but honestly, it's been tough. Sometimes I struggle to afford even basic things like toiletries. I'm really grateful to my son for helping me out." Seizing the opportunity, I invited her over for tea the following day, suggesting a casual get-together to perhaps learn more about her situation firsthand. "Tea sounds wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. You know, things have been tight for me too. Sometimes I can't even afford tea, so it would be nice to have some with you." "Oh, it'll be my pleasure, Catherine. Just come over and we'll have a nice afternoon together," I replied, setting my plan into motion. The next day, we sat down for tea, enjoying light conversation. When Catherine excused herself to use the bathroom, I saw my chance to uncover more about her financial reality. I found her phone in her purse, unlocked it, and opened her banking app. Women's intuition pushed me forward, feeling both the weight and the risk of what I was about to discover about her true financial standing. As my suspicions about Catherine's financial situation grew, I decided to delve deeper into her records. What I found was completely unexpected and left me reeling. Catherine, who I thought was struggling financially, actually had a staggering $2.1 million in her bank account, a discovery that I had to double-check to believe. The reality of her wealth was undeniable as I refreshed her banking app and saw the same huge sum staring back at me. My confusion only intensified when I stumbled upon a text message on her phone from one of her employees. The message read, "Hello, Catherine. Please find attached the financial breakdown of last month's earnings. Just wanted to let you know it looks like we've made a big profit for the 5th month in a row. You're a fantastic businesswoman. I'm eager to hear your thoughts." Driven by a mix of disbelief and curiosity, I opened the attached document and was confronted with even more astonishing figures: a monthly profit of $10,200. For a small business, this was no small feat. Sitting there, absorbing the shock of what I'd discovered, a wave of anger washed over me. Catherine had been extracting money from her son and indirectly from her grandchildren under the guise of need, which now appeared to be nothing more than a manipulation to boost her already substantial wealth. As I heard Catherine's footsteps approaching, I hastily cleared all evidence of my snooping and returned her phone to her purse, my heart racing. When Catherine returned, she thanked me warmly for the tea, continuing to play the part of a financially burdened elderly woman. "Oh, Janet, thank you again for the lovely tea. You know, as an old lady, it's tough to manage, especially when you're already struggling. Lately, things have been really hard for me, dear." Her words, now so clearly disconnected from her financial reality, echoed hollowly as I nodded, hiding my turmoil behind a polite smile. The discrepancy between her portrayed hardships and her actual prosperity left me grappling with what to do next. Catherine expressed her gratitude for the support my husband and I had been providing, and with a polite smile, she ventured to ask if it might be possible to increase her monthly assistance to $8,000. It took every bit of composure I had to maintain a calm demeanor in response to her request, given the discoveries I had made about her actual financial situation. "I understand that times seem tough for you and we want to help," I managed to say, keeping my voice even. "It's not as if you have millions tucked away." Her brief pause at my words nearly went unnoticed, but I was too attuned to her reactions now. She quickly covered her surprise, laughing it off. "Oh no, of course not. If I were that wealthy, I wouldn't be asking for more help, darling. So, what do you say?" Regrettably, I had to let her down gently. "Unfortunately, we can't manage an extra $1,900 right now." The change in Catherine's expression was immediate. Her smile vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped look of frustration. "That's all right, no problem," she said briskly, her tone slightly colder. "I have to leave now, but let's catch up again soon." She left in a hurry, almost as if embarrassed by a personal rejection. With the knowledge of her deceit fresh in my mind, any remnants of sympathy I had for her evaporated. I faced a dilemma about whether to reveal what I had discovered to my husband. After some thought, I decided it was important for him to see his mother's true character on his own, especially given his past criticisms of my concerns. It was a tough lesson, but one he needed to learn by himself. A few days later, the time came to send Catherine her usual $6,100 allowance. Despite having the money ready, I hesitated. Given what I knew, I opted not to send it immediately. I wanted her to experience the surprise and perhaps a bit of the hardship she had so falsely claimed to endure. This decision wasn't made lightly, but it felt necessary to underline the severity of the situation and to prompt a more genuine conversation in the future. When the money didn't arrive as expected, it was the wake-up call Catherine truly needed. As predicted, my husband called me a few hours later, visibly upset. "What's going on?" he demanded. "What do you mean?" I replied, trying to keep calm. "Don't play dumb, Janet. I know what you're up to. Why haven't you sent Mom the allowance? I'm getting tired of your games," he accused. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Listen, I understand you care about your mom, and I'm sorry if it seems like I don't appreciate that, but you need to hear me out. There's a reason behind what I'm doing. He cut me off, his tone harsh and dismissive. You don't even earn a dime to have a say in how we spend our money. It's my money, and I'll decide what to do with it. So when I say send money, you do it. You're just a housewife, remember that. His words were like a knife through my heart. How could he speak to me that way? All the frustration and anger I had contained for so long suddenly erupted, and I couldn't hold back any longer. You know what your problem is. You don't appreciate me. Do you think being a housewife and mom is a breeze? Well, let's see how easy it is without me. I'm not sticking around to be treated like this. But before I go, check your mother's bank account. Don't bother calling me until you've done that. Have a nice evening. Janet, wait, I didn't mean... He started to say, but I had already hung up. I was done being treated like I didn't matter. Sometimes life throws challenges at us that force us to take a stand. I had been working tirelessly, and all my efforts were taken for granted. Let's see how he manages without me, especially when he discovers the truth about his mother's deceit. Driven by a mixture of defiance and the need for vindication, I sent him the photos I had taken of his mother's bank account details during my investigation. It was time he saw the full picture and understood the extent of the situation. I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb mode, gathered some essentials, and packed bags for myself and the kids. We checked into a nearby hotel, a move I explained away to the children by saying our house needed fumigation and it would be a short stay. To keep their worries at bay, I reassured them that Daddy was staying at a different hotel for the time being. I wanted to protect them from the harsh realities and the tension at home. They didn't need to bear the weight of adult problems. Despite setting my phone to ignore incoming calls and messages, notifications from my mother-in-law and my husband began to fill my inbox. I was too emotionally exhausted to confront them, so I focused on making the evening enjoyable and relaxing for my children. We played games and spent quality time together, a much-needed distraction for all of us. The next morning, I was awakened by a call from the hotel's front desk. "Hello, miss. There's someone named Liam here who'd like to meet you. For safety reasons, we need to confirm if you know each other." "Yes, I know him. He's my husband," I responded, letting them know they could give him my room number. When Liam arrived, he immediately embraced me, his hug full of regret and desperation. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for everything. I saw the evidence you sent me and you were right not to give her any more money," he said, tears streaming down his face as he clung to me. I led him into the room, and as he composed himself, we sat down to talk. "Darling, I'm so sorry for everything. I'm glad you realized what was going on. Can you tell me what happened?" he asked, genuinely remorseful. Just then, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I hesitated but decided to answer. "Hello? How dare you invade my privacy like that? I could sue, you know. Do you even need the money? How dare you try to ruin my reputation in front of my son?" she accused furiously. Her words confirmed her disregard for the strain she was putting on our family. Despite her anger, I remained calm, aware that Liam needed to see this side of her for himself. Her manipulation had to be laid bare, not just for my sake, but for the well-being of our entire family. As my mother-in-law's voice crackled through the phone, her words were laced with malice, not resembling the woman I once knew, but more like a vindictive stranger. "Ha, you must be delusional if you think he'll stop sending me money. Do you think he'll listen to a mere housewife? You're sorely mistaken. Yes, I have money. I've always had money since my husband passed away. I just like to control Liam sometimes so he doesn't get too arrogant. He needs to remember that mommy comes first." Her harsh words turned my blood cold, and her tone, manipulative and bitter, shocked me deeply. The yelling was loud enough to wake the children, adding chaos to the already tense atmosphere. Unfazed by the impact of her actions, she continued, "So you're not bothered by how your selfishness has disrupted this household? You don't care that Liam and I have been arguing because of your actions. You don't even care that you've been stealing from your son and grandchildren." Her response was chilling. "Oh, come on. You two are headed for divorce anyway. I can't wait for that. They'll come home to me eventually. And as for those kids, well, I guess I don't really care." "Mom, that's incredibly cruel," I said, hoping Liam was listening. Liam, who had been quiet, finally spoke, his voice filled with disbelief and hurt. "Liam, honey, listen, I didn't mean it." "Nope, that won't work on me this time," he replied firmly. "I've seen your true colors and I've had enough. You've made the past few months hell for me and Janet. How could you manipulate me like this? I'm your son. What kind of evil has possessed you to do such terrible things?" I could hear the betrayal in his voice, the disappointment that he had not seen the signs himself. "I fell for your tricks, but my wonderful wife, Janet, saw through you all along. She knew something was off, but I shouted at her and disrespected her. Not anymore. Janet is my real family, not you. I never want to hear from you again." "Liam, wait, but I have no one," she pleaded weakly. "Maybe that's how it should be," he concluded, and with a definitive click, he ended the call, closing a painful chapter and perhaps opening the door to a new beginning for us. Despite his upset demeanor, I could see a clear sense of relief wash over Liam as he processed the truth. He had been manipulated his entire life, a realization that must have felt like a heavy weight being lifted from his shoulders. For the rest of the day, he was profoundly apologetic to both me and our children for the way he had behaved, and for the emotional distance he had imposed upon us. He confessed that he couldn't even endure a single night without us, acknowledging how much he had taken for granted. Liam expressed deep remorse for his past mistakes and made a heartfelt promise to change. He was determined not to let history repeat itself, especially now that he understood the manipulative dynamics that had clouded his judgment for so long. As for his relationship with his mother, he was resolute. When he said he didn't want to hear from her again, he meant it. Despite her repeated attempts to reach out, Liam consistently declined her calls. She had chosen her path, and now she had to face the consequences alone. His commitment to putting our family first marked a new chapter for us, filled with hope for a more united future.
Hello, I'm Susan, and I'm 30 years old. I met my husband Ethan through a mutual friend, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. We haven't started a family yet, but we're thoroughly enjoying our life together. Ethan's family owns a thriving factory that employs about 50 people. The business was founded by Ethan's late father and has expanded considerably due to the dedication and effort of all involved. Currently, Ethan's sister Maria manages the company. She is unmarried and excels at her role, likely inheriting her knack for management from their mother, as both are exceptional communicators. Maria is very approachable and welcoming. She made me feel like a sister right from our first meeting, which was a refreshing change since I grew up with my brothers. However, not everything is smooth. The factory operates close to our family home, and since my father-in-law passed, my mother-in-law has retired. She looks forward to our 2 p.m. coffee breaks, which I have come to dread. Anytime I am tasked with fetching her coffee, my spirits plummet. She uses these breaks to voice her discontent, often questioning why Ethan and I haven't had children yet, a topic out of our control. Her words can be cut. If I don't respond, she grows more irritated, making hurtful remarks about my worthiness as Ethan's wife, and even making morbid comments about my deceased parents. This tension stems from a misunderstanding that occurred when I first met Ethan's family. Upon learning that both of my parents had passed away, my mother from cancer when I was 8, and my father from a heart attack when I was 18, my mother-in-law was visibly shocked. My childhood was challenging, but my father raised my brother and me single-handedly. I deeply miss him, especially since he passed before I could truly show my gratitude for his sacrifices. Navigating these family dynamics has been tough, especially when confronted with my mother-in-law's harsh words. Yet, despite these challenges,
The bond I share with Ethan and the kindness from parts of his family like Maria gives me strength. I cherish the new family ties I've formed and am learning to handle the more complex relationships with grace. People often express sympathy when they learn about my past, acknowledging the challenges I must have faced growing up without my parents. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was starkly different. "So, you might not live long either, huh?" she remarked once, stunning me with her blunt and insensitive words. During that uncomfortable moment, my husband Ethan was just as shocked as I was. Yet my mother-in-law continued to press the issue as if it were a matter of practical concern. At one point, as I was grappling with doubts about my place in the family, Maria, who had remained silent up to then, suddenly made her stance clear. Slamming her hand on the table, she interrupted the tense atmosphere, her voice cutting through the silence, forcing everyone to freeze. When my mother-in-law tried to seek affirmation from her, suggesting, "Right, Maria? You agree with me, don't you?" Maria responded with a frosty glare. "What are you talking about? Ethan chose Susan himself and she's wonderful. Why can't you support that?" Her words, firm and protective, surprised her mother, who held her in high regard, and it marked the end of the overtly harsh comments, at least in the presence of others. Still, the subtle digs didn't stop entirely. During our coffee breaks, when it was just the two of us, I could see the disappointment in my mother-in-law's eyes when I, not Maria, brought her coffee. Fortunately, Ethan and I didn't live with his family. We rented a nearby room, which spared me from constant exposure to her negativity, limited only to those brief interactions. Our brief reprieve from living under the same roof ended abruptly when a record-breaking hurricane wreaked havoc, leaving our room and several others in the building severely damaged. The ceiling leaked so badly that staying there became impossible. While trying to manage this crisis, Maria offered a solution with an innocent smile. "Why worry? Just stay with us. Your commute will be 25 seconds. Given the circumstances, we moved in with Ethan's family temporarily. "Welcome home, Ethan. It must have been tough, but Mom is happy we can live together again," my mother-in-law greeted us, displaying a warmth directed mostly towards her son. Ethan, however, mostly ignored her, his demeanor resembling that of a rebellious teenager. Then, noticing me, she remarked, "Oh, Susan, you're here too? I didn't notice because you're so quiet. Smile more." Her words, meant to be lighthearted, only added tension, reflected in Ethan's frustrated expression.
The dynamic in the household was strained, yet this experience only emphasized the complex layers of family interactions and the resilience needed to navigate them. After moving in with my in-laws following the hurricane damage to our apartment, I faced the new dynamics of living under the same roof with them. To show my appreciation on our first night, I decided to cook dinner, preparing a simple yet hearty meal of bread soup and steak. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complimented the meal, which eased some of my tension, and I felt a moment of genuine relief. However, an unexpected turn happened just as I thought dinner was winding down. My mother-in-law stood up, humming cheerfully, and retrieved a container from the fridge. She then generously topped her steak with its contents, which, to my surprise, was jam. This unusual pairing caught the attention of everyone at the table. My husband, sitting next to me, looked visibly disgusted, while Maria, with an eye roll, commented that no amount of persuasion could stop their mother from her peculiar food habits before bursting into laughter. Observing more closely, the sight of jam on a perfectly good steak was peculiar indeed. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet, right?" my mother-in-law explained, quite pleased with herself. Despite her enthusiasm, the thought alone was enough to give me heartburn. Noticing my hesitation, she encouraged me to try it, proclaiming it delicious. I managed a forced smile which did not seem to satisfy her. "I'm recommending it for a reason. You might live longer if you follow my example," she remarked cryptically before leaving the room. My husband and Maria quickly apologized for her odd behavior, explaining that she had an intense sweet tooth and never felt her day was complete without indulging in something sugary.
Apparently, her health checkups always returned normal results, which seemed miraculous given her diet. Maria then shared that she was often sent to buy cake because her mother found it embarrassing to do so herself. This errand had made Maria quite familiar with all the local cake shops. Ethan, chiming in, expressed concern about their mother's health habits, feeling guilty that Maria often had to manage their mother's whims alone. "Well, I think you guys will have to help out more from now on," Maria cheerfully declared, suggesting that we might be in for more lively interactions with my mother-in-law. Living with the in-laws, despite its challenges, had its perks like the drastically shorter commute, but it also meant navigating a complex web of family dynamics, dietary quirks, and unexpected comments, all under one roof. I had taken on the responsibility of managing the household chores, making sure everything was in order both before and after my workday. Despite my efforts to engage in conversation with my mother-in-law, she frequently dismissed me or reacted coldly. Regardless of her attitude, she never passed up an opportunity to criticize the children over coffee breaks. Since relocating here, my days have increasingly become more challenging, likely due to the added stress, which visibly affected my mood. My husband noticed this shift and suggested multiple times that we should visit a doctor together. He even proposed escaping to a hotel for a short break, which I declined, considering it an unnecessary expense, especially since the nearest hotel was quite a distance away. The situation took a turn for the worse when my husband announced an upcoming week-long business trip. To my dismay, he also mentioned that my sister-in-law Maria would be joining him. This meant I would be alone with my mother-in-law, which filled me with dread. Although he offered to take me along, I decided against it, hoping to endure the week despite feeling unwell. On the morning they left, Maria sent a message to my phone titled Mother-in-Law Survival Guide, which humorously advised, "If anything happens, just give her cake and you'll be fine." It included a list of local cake shops and her favorite selections from each. This quirky guide was surprisingly comforting, given the tough week I was bracing for. I remained optimistic that after the week, our home renovations would be complete and we could return to our usual living situation. However, that glimmer of hope dimmed on the first evening alone when I came back from work to find my mother-in-law confrontationally blocking the entrance. She demanded, "You know why I'm angry, don't you?" I responded, somewhat exasperated, "No, I'm not psychic." It turned out I had missed both the scheduled 2 p.m. coffee breaks, something that slipped my mind amidst the chaos of juggling work and home in the absence of my husband and Maria. I had hoped she would be understanding, given her work history, but instead, she lashed out the moment we were alone, accusing me of starting this harassment and labeling me a wicked woman. I was stunned, feeling an immense disconnect and wondering why I was being treated so harshly when all I had done was inadvertently miss a couple of coffee breaks. I was counting down the days until my husband and sister-in-law returned, holding on to the hope that it was just a few more days of enduring the strained atmosphere. During a particularly rough day, I had bought a cake over my lunch break and left it in the office fridge, planning to smooth things over with my mother-in-law. When I mentioned the forgotten cake, her demeanor shifted from anger to delight. "Let's just forget today happened. Just don't forget tomorrow, okay?" she said with renewed cheerfulness before returning to her room. From then on, I was diligent about remembering the coffee breaks, knowing the drama that would ensue if I slipped up again. On the morning my husband and Maria were due back, I was overcome with stress, experiencing nausea, headaches, and a total loss of appetite. I couldn't handle work, so I took the day off to visit the hospital. The doctor's words shattered me. "It's quite serious. Can your family come right away?" I was diagnosed with cancer and given a prognosis of possibly only 2 to 5 months left. Tears stained my face as I returned home, physically shaking and emotionally spent. When I arrived, I collapsed onto the bed, only to be interrupted by the door slamming open. My mother-in-law stormed in, scolding me for skipping work while the others were hard at it. Her harsh words only intensified my headache. With little energy left, I told her I was feeling ill and turned away to close my eyes. She lingered, continuing to rant about my supposed inadequacies and even insinuating I wouldn't live long. I lay there silently, feigning sleep. Suddenly, she demanded to know why I hadn't prepared for today's coffee break. Her insensitivity was appalling. I opened my eyes to find her hovering over me. "Grace, I'm sorry, I'm just not well enough to go shopping today. Could you please?" She cut me off dismissively, demanding chocolate cake and accusing me of faking my illness. My frustration boiled over. "Shut up! Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your damn cake, you idiot." My words left her speechless, her eyes wide in shock. At that moment, my husband and Maria appeared, alarmed by the confrontation. "Mom, what are you doing? And Susan, what do you mean by 1 more month?" My husband's face was pale, mirroring Maria's concern. Ignoring the visibly shaken mother-in-law, my husband rushed to my side. His support was a sudden relief and I burst into tears. "I can't take it anymore," I sobbed. "The doctor says it might be cancer and I feel terrible, but she keeps nagging me to go buy cake. Enough is enough, and stop bothering me about the kids too. Just leave me alone, you idiot." All my pent-up resentment towards my mother-in-law came pouring out as I finally voiced my anguish and frustration. As I broke down in tears, my husband and sister-in-law fixed my mother-in-law with icy stares. The thought of sending a sick person out to buy a cake seemed absurd to them. Maria, usually so cheerful, now wore a grim expression that was frankly intimidating. In this tension, my husband raised his voice, revealing something deeply personal. "You've been making mean comments about us not having kids. Well, the reason we can't have kids is because of me," he admitted. It turned out that about a year after we got married, we saw a doctor because we were having trouble conceiving. The test showed that I was fine, but that there were issues with my husband's fertility. He had been devastated by the diagnosis and frequently apologized to me, looking so forlorn. I never wanted to burden him further, so I avoided discussing children. I loved our life together, just the two of us, and never considered leaving him over our inability to have children. We had kept this private, especially from my mother-in-law, knowing she would only use it to hassle us. As my husband spoke, my mother-in-law's face seemed to drain of life. Just then, my phone rang. It was the hospital calling, and the tone was urgent. They asked us to come in immediately. The call ramped up my anxiety, and I began to cry again. "It's okay, Susan. Can you stand? I'm right here with you," my husband said, his voice thick with emotion. Together, we hurried to the hospital. When we arrived, we were quickly ushered into a room where not only the doctor but also the hospital director were waiting. They had shocking news. There had been a dreadful mistake. My medical records had been confused with another patient who had the same name and birth date. It was a misdiagnosis. I did not have cancer. The oversight seemed unbelievable, yet the tired expressions on the faces of the medical staff spoke volumes. This error later made local news, prompting the hospital to promise a review of their procedures to prevent such a mistake again. They referred us to another hospital for a follow-up. Back at my in-laws' house, it appeared that Maria had taken the time to reprimand my mother-in-law, who now seemed smaller, almost shrinking into her chair. Maria later confessed to me that she had been terrified at the thought of her brother potentially losing his wife. The entire ordeal had brought some harsh realities to light, and it seemed to have changed the dynamics in our family, hopefully for the better. Amidst the tears and confessions, an unexpected twist of fate transformed our emotions. When my sister-in-law Maria, with genuine concern etched on her face, asked about my well-being, I revealed with tears of joy spilling from my eyes, "I'm pregnant." Beside me, my husband too began to cry, his tears reflecting the pure happiness we both felt. We rushed to the maternity hospital as recommended, where it was confirmed early on in the visit. "Yes, you're pregnant. We can hear the heartbeat," the doctor announced. Hearing this, we both cried even more, overwhelmed by the joy of the news. Maria, who was with us, also shed tears, expressing her relief and happiness. Following this emotional roller coaster, Maria got engaged to her long-term boyfriend and announced her plans to move to another state with him after resigning from her job. We had been aware of her plans, so it wasn't a shock to us. Meanwhile, my husband, who was about to take over as the new CEO, had his schedule packed with client meetings. The business trip, which he later explained was cut short, allowing him to return home early, was for this transition. However, my mother-in-law was completely out of the loop about Maria's life changes. When Maria mentioned her upcoming marriage and move, my mother-in-law was utterly surprised. "What? Getting married, quitting her job, and moving to another state?" she exclaimed in disbelief. Maria playfully reminded her, "Yeah, I told you, remember? Well, it doesn't matter now. It's all settled." This left my mother-in-law dazed, but eventually we all shared a laugh over the confusion. Upon returning home, we were greeted by the sight of our previously leaky roof, now fully repaired, and our room looking as good as new. We cheered with delight at the renovations, feeling a fresh start was truly upon us. Despite the newfound joy and repairs, the atmosphere remained somewhat strained with my mother-in-law. My husband, in particular, harbored a deep-seated anger that was hard to dispel. My husband was more upset than I was, and had even declared he never wanted to see his mother again. However, she began to show up occasionally during our coffee breaks, not with cakes as before, but with healthier alternatives like biscuits. It seemed she was trying to adopt a more health-conscious approach, especially now that she knew she would soon be a grandmother. The employees, many of whom had worked with my father-in-law when he was CEO, seemed genuinely pleased to see her. This made me realize that she wasn't inherently unkind, perhaps just a bit misguided in her previous actions. Over time, our interactions became more frequent and positive, and she gradually stopped her habitual complaining. When our daughter Catherine was born, my mother-in-law truly transformed. She began to contribute more helpfully, buying diapers and often leaving homemade side dishes for our dinner. She'd leave these in a cooler outside our door with a message, choosing not to ring the bell to avoid disturbing us. I really appreciated these thoughtful gestures, and it made me feel like we could genuinely get along. What sealed this newfound peace was a moment shortly after Catherine's birth. My mother-in-law took my hand, her eyes filled with tears, and sincerely thanked me. "Thank you, Susan, really thank you," she said. Witnessing her genuine emotion, I knew her transformation was sincere. Maria, too, seemed to be thriving in her new life, and recently shared her pregnancy news. It looks like it won't be long before we're all gathered at the in-laws' house, sharing a meal in a genuinely harmonious setting. This hopeful future felt like a significant and welcome change from the past tensions.